I joined a game jam, specifically Toybox Jam 2025, hosted by Tom Hall. And if that name isn't ringing a bell, he's a co-founder of id Software, as well as one of the creators of Doom and Wolfenstein 3D. Look at him. That's the look that says, yeah, I worked on Doom. Reading more about Tom Hall on the Wikipedia mentions that Tom Hall has suffered a stroke and fully recovered, but having known people who have had strokes, I know sometimes they lose some of the mobility in one of their arms. So for this game, early on I decided this game was going to be able to be played with one hand. That doesn't mean you can beat your meat while playing the game. So I settled on my engine of choice, Unreal Engine, a terrible choice from the get-go for a 2D game, and got to work. I started by selecting the third-person game with the variant of a side-scroller. Then I immediately changed my mind and selected a blank template. At this point, the game jam was live, and I had to find the assets. Eventually, I found the big-ass red underlined text that said, "Here they are." I downloaded them and had begun formulating what my game would be and how it should play. I eventually found a video that mentioned doing a game jam, you should write your ideas on a flashcard, and that would help you avoid scope creep. I loved this idea, and it actually propelled me to finish my game instead of constantly adding new mechanics and other shit. So in my new blank template, I started turning off things that make Unreal Engine drag its ass like a dog with worms: Nanite and Lumen. Since I had never made a 2D game in Unreal Engine at all, I went to YouTube to find a tutorial on how to do it. We started by creating the map folder and naming it something unique and original. We then went to the project settings to set this new map as the default startup map. Cobra Code then led me to the default pixels per Unreal unit and said it needed adjusted. I didn't understand why, but I'm sure this will have no negative consequences later. Cobra imported some pre-made assets, but I used my game jam assets. So this first thing I noticed about my sprites being in the engine is that they look like I failed an eye exam. Confused, I went to Google to see why, which was answered in the search. I applied the 2D sprite settings and the sprites instantly looked better. I started looking at the map sprites to try and figure out what the game should look like and what the settings should be. I then created a tile set which is needed to create the layout for the 2D map. After messing around with the size, I managed to start creating tiles and adding collision to my sprite tiles. Next, I had to condition tile sheet texture so I could actually start creating the map. With that done, I was ready to start creating the map. After finishing the map, one thing was clear. This looked overexposed as hell, so I went to the project settings trying to turn off exposure. There, much better. Now it was time to make the tile sets for the character sprites. Having finished that, it was time to make the first animation for our character. Okay, so he's a little excited to stand still. With the animations created, it was time to make the character blueprint that would act as our movement and inputs. But I didn't completely remember, so I googled just to be sure. Then Cobra gave the answer 10 seconds later. Also, it wasn't just a character blueprint, it was a paper character, which I had never heard of. He tiny. There we go, he's big now. At this point, we needed to turn off more things because UE5 is designed to make 3D games look good, but run like shit. So we turned off motion blur, anti-aliasing, auto exposure, and ambient occlusion. Now it was time to set up the game mode so we could set our player character pawn. So now our main part is set up, but because there is nothing actually coded into the pawn, we don't actually control it yet. I got sidetracked. I've been playing Resident Evil 6. The concept was fresh in my mind, so I wanted to pick a title that would convey the core mechanic. No, not that one. After getting focused again, the character finally had movement. Reaching the end of the tutorial, the character being able to only move wasn't going to cut it. Instead, I went to Gemini to ask it to expand on the tutorial and how I could make a projectile for my character. After a lot of trial and error, I was able to finally create a nice projectile for the character. A little more tweaking and I added a 2D sound to play when the player fires the projectile. So at this point, I wanted to create the title to show in the level. After 12 minutes of it not working, I went back to Gemini to ask it what the hell was happening. Which I found out it's related to a lighting issue, basically causing the text to be there, but it was so dark you couldn't see it. So I added a light to the blueprint and it worked like a charm. At this point, I started making the farmer blueprint so you'd have something to shoot. I started hooking up the nose that I copied from the player character and ended up having to do a lot more because that didn't work. Since this was just a normal enemy that had nothing special, I wanted it to move back and forth. I went to Gemini to figure out why it wouldn't run in the reverse direction. Finally, I got it working, but he was a little slow. Also, he teleported. He also had no collision and couldn't be shot. He's practically finished. Since Gemini wasn't helping at all, I went to Unreal Engine forums to learn about timelines, which ended up working. He still can't be killed. Aside from adding a snazzy pan up on the title screen, the farmer is finally killable. So he just doesn't disappear. I also wanted to add a sound effect, as well as spawning an effect from where the farmer was originally. After some tweaking, I made it so when shot, he turns into a VFX and then disappears. I'll add more later. And by later, I mean right now. Now when the farmer is shot, it spawns an effect and then spawns a skeleton in his place. I then started to flesh out the level more, adding in blocks that will get in my way and have to fix later. Game development is fun. Finally, I started to create the first actual character of the game. The first one was Foreplay. After reconfiguring the wizard blueprint, I had a working chicken blueprint, where you could play yourself in a video game. Just kidding. And with that, the first level was done. I added a quote, because I'm pretentious. At this point, I thought trying to explain the story as well as the controls without dialogue was going to be way too hard, so I added a fairy like Ocarina of Time to get in the way. I already had the other two transformations in mind, so I began making the flipbooks for the cow and the pig. Perfect. With the cow and the pig movements finished, I began to expand on the cow's ability, a charge. Since the cow was only charging in one direction, I went to Gemini to explain how to make it charge in the direction of movement. So I finally started working on the fairy blueprint because it was kind of important to the game, making it so it would move to locations depending on the trigger boxes the player hit. And the layout started to come together pretty nicely, and I was very excited at this point. I started creating widget blueprints to create dialogue for the fairy. At this point, off camera, the worst possible thing that could happen did. I modified my map to create more collision tiles, and it deleted my entire maps. A week of work. Gone. After 3 hours of disappointment, frustration, sadness, and regret, I left the game jam and took a walk outside. Then I came right back and rejoined the game jam and rebuilt the maps from memory. Using the footage I had taken along the way, I recreated the maps I had lost from scratch. Back in full swing now, I blazed forward and finished level 2. I kept going on to level 3 now, and with no idea really planned, except you were going to turn into a cow this level. At this point, it was 9 days into the game jam, and I was curious as to what my competition was uploading. I found this game and it looked interesting, but it wasn't finished yet. Surprisingly, at this point, I found a new way to cast to multiple blueprints without directly casting to the cow or chicken. I could branch for an actor has tag node instead and apply the player tag to the characters to make them pass. I tested dying in the game because at this point there was no checkpoints, so I'll add them later. Playing the chicken was fine, but I wanted to make it just a tiny bit more in depth, so I added the ability to hide in hay like some kind of assassin chicken creed. Continuing on adding mechanics, I began to create a breakable wall for the cow that was destroyed when they charged into it. I continued to fill out level 3 and finally had to reach a point where you transform into the pig. This created issues where transforming was really buggy and took a lot of effort to fix. Finally, we started to reach the home stretch. This was the creation of the 4th and final level, where all previous levels and taught skills would have to be molded together to make them shine. Unlike the previous 3 levels, I decided to actually create a rough map to show where all the key features of the map would be. I wanted to make more features without specifically adding to the blueprint, so I decided to make a button that would affect the moving platform. Continuing to add some variety, I wanted to add moving platforms that would kill the player if they touched it. A large majority of level 4 was now finished, and I had played through the entire game from start to the midpoint of level 4 just to see how it played and if everything was working fine. After everything worked pretty well, I moved on to creating the Phase 1 boss from the original concept map. This would be the wizard from the first map. At this point, I was so ready for this to be over. I quit filming as much because it was going to be a massive undertaking to get over 70 videos of footage, so I didn't get any film of the Phase 2 boss fight. I started to package the game for Windows, which I've never packaged an Unreal Engine game before, and it's awful. I had to go back into every level of the game and add VSync because there was really bad screen tearing going on. Since I was back in there anyway, I also added the escape key as a way to quit out of the game instead of Alt F4. This is the 3rd time I went back into the game after it was packaged and had to set a frame rate limit cap to 60 FPS because apparently VSync is tied to the frames, so if you have more than 60 FPS, it wouldn't work. With the game finally finished, I went and tested the entire game, only to find out right at the end, the sacred water you jump in to end the game, it didn't work. So for the 4th time, I went back into the game to fix it. And with that, the game was done. It worked, there were no bugs, and I was finished. I went on to itch.io, a place where I had gotten so many games, and this time, I was giving one back. Okay, here we are. We made it. This was like 2 weeks in the making. Remold the game, so I'm going to play through it at the end of this video. So let's enjoy it together. So it's really kind of intuitive, a game by Doombox. Surprising, I put my own name in there. Made for Toy Box Jam 2025. As I was saying, it tells you the controls right at the beginning to tell you space is how you cast, which is kind of intuitive in the way that it carries over to the next levels, so the player can kind of understand that, oh, I was able to press the spacebar to do stuff, so maybe I can press spacebar to keep doing stuff. This was so much work and effort, and it was really fun to make. It was the first game jam I've ever joined. So now we come in as the chicken. Hey, hold on. You're not really a chicken, are you? I'm a fairy. I can smell the magic on you. It's like Navi. But you'll never last like this. You can't fight that skeleton ahead. Maybe you can try that tunnel ahead to avoid it. Can do. Alright. And, another cutscene. Not bad for a chicken, I jest, but you likely want to return to your original body, right? I thought so. Ahead there is a sacred body of water. Dive into it and your form should be restored. Little dev knowledge. There's a trigger box here. So you can't ever interact with that skeleton to begin with. Okay, it's looking a lot better. I had to keep turning on vertical sync, VSync, and cap the frames to 60 because VSync wasn't doing anything, and I read that it was tied to your frames. This is the first time I've ever packaged a game, and UE5 can be really finicky. UE4 felt so much better. I swear to God, I made this game. There we go. Okay, and this is something I added in later. It's a checkpoint. Uh-oh, another skeleton ahead. Can't go under it this time. Maybe you can stand in front of those weeds and jump in. No! It's interesting. I'm seeing like a lot of tears in the map and on my character, which wasn't a thing when I was developing the game, and I'm wondering if it's like a UE5 thing. Wow, that's a jump stone. It allows you to jump off certain walls. So I just finished the game. I'm recording this now. I have like 60 videos of footage to record because, again, this took like 2 weeks to do. So this may be in there, it may not, but these are actually just nodes that launch the character. So it's actually just launching me. I'm not actually pressing anything. I thought that was kind of an intuitive way to just have, you know, a jump off the wall mechanic without doing anything crazy in depth. Because this was just, you found the water. How do you feel? Get out. Let's see you. And now he's a cow. Holy cow. I mean, you're a cow. Not ideal, but there's more water ahead. Let's go check that out. But first, let's find a way out. I can't even read my own dialogue right. That's you in your head. I got you now. So you can't jump in that form. The chicken would be useful right now. Maybe you can transform as easy as 1, 2, or 3. So I was kind of iffy about having that one. I didn't want to come right out and say, you know, press 1, 2, 3 or space to jump kind of shit. So it's the 1, 2, or 3 key. Gives you the ability to transform into other animals. Another jump wall. Now we can start to shine. This is, oh. There we go. I swear I made this game. Oh my god. No, this was a blast to make though, and it was a lot of fun. I swear to God, it's one of those things where like you can do something perfectly and then when you go to show people, you just suck at it. Okay, that worked. I don't know why I was able to nail that 100% every single time when I was making the game, and now all of a sudden it's just like some big issue. But anyway, we finally made it. We're going to keep going up, and this is where we get our final transformation. Okay, this one has to work. Get out, let's see. Wow, that's really something. Maybe you got a new ability like before. And this ability is to dig underground. So come up. And I really like that section because it was made to implement every single power all at once. So you dug into the ground, smashed into the block, and then jumped into the hay. And then immediately follow that by a wall jump. Like I said, it was so much fun making this, and it was neat to see, you know, how powerful Unreal Engine was. I don't think Unreal Engine 5 is great for 2D games, honestly. UE4 more likely. You've made it really far with no luck. Ahead is the wizard's hideout. Maybe defeating him will restore your form. I don't know. Let's see. Alright, I'm going to hide right here. Wait for him to pass. Because this one you can't kill with the cow. So now that I'm the cow, and the cow is fantastic for fast traversal, which I kind of wanted to do. It's kind of like a philosophy that I've always had in game design, was that if you have something, you should make it work in multiple ways. So if you have like a combat ability, it should also work as a movement traversal ability. Or any way, you know, any way that you do your game. Little game dev secret, you can just die right here and it takes you right back to the start real fast. You bypass all that. And also, like, you know, like I said, cow is fantastic for quick traversal, so you can just almost bypass that entire puzzle, which is good because I don't want to play I don't want to punish the player for playing smart, you know what I mean? or experimenting. And like, you know, it was a 2-week game jam. This isn't a very long game. We're actually almost at the end of it. That is it. The final battle. The wizard is up ahead. I didn't even read that close to what it said. So the final battle isn't anything crazy at this point. I was just burnt out. You are an annoying pest. Your life as farm stock suits you, however, this is the end. So I already know what's going to happen. He's got the wall there. Comes back down. Hit him again. This time, if you jumped into that shit, you were dead. I dodged it. And there he is. Gah, you die now. But see, this was designed around people that walk slow. Because I didn't think if people would be able to figure out to use the cow to move a little bit. So if you use the cow, you're pretty good. Hurry, charge it as the cow. There he is. There we go. It worked. It worked. You did it. Let's go. Remold. Created by Doombox. Made for Toy Box Jam 2025. Play tested by Teresa and Doombox. Hey, check out my YouTube channel. Thanks for playing, and now it'll just exit.